So, you know, it's those of us who've been working on it, like you and I, we know this has been around for 50 years. The general idea, right? And it wasn't only until Chat GPT came out that the world caught fire in a very interesting way, and we've not seen anything like that. I'm curious, because you were playing with things before that. When did you get the sense of the transformative potential of AI, specifically as it relates to marketing?
The end of November 2022, when ChatGPT was released. So we have to draw a distinction between traditional AI, which is machine learning, and
Right.
generative AI, which is this new thing.
Right. So at the same time, all of us, give me some examples, because I love collecting examples of how people have what they're starting to use it for. And I don't know that we need to get into a discussion of, are people going to lose their jobs? Let's say this, how are they going to be better at their jobs? Why don't we do that?
So what are people using it for? It's a progression. Everybody did the same thing the first time they saw it, is they treated it like Google, and they asked it a question and it gave them an answer. And if you asked it a question for a fact and it hallucinated, you said, well, this doesn't work. I don't like it. And then the second time you tried it, it was, oh, help me write emails and landing pages and summarize reports and meetings. And that was great. That was awesome. But then we discovered, you know what, we can automate workflows with it. We can ask it to help us accomplish not just tasks, but also projects, which is enormously valuable for productivity and expediency. But we're still trying to make it do things that we have already done. So it's like the first websites we had were brochureware. The first television ads were a man standing in front of a microphone holding a script because it was radio on television. We didn't know what to do. This thing, while it's really good for creating content and drawing pretty pictures and helping us automate stuff, it has this other untapped potential that has me all excited, which is this idea about imagination and creativity. And that's the thing that has me so excited.
I agree with you 1,000%, and I'm curious if it is, there's a legion of us who are trying to do different things. We try this with lots of experimentation going on, lots of let's try this, let's try that. No, 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 no. Are you suggesting possibly that even with all of our drilling into this, we're just capturing this thin layer on the outside, and there's this big untapped capability underneath that?
Exactly. It is being handed a spreadsheet and using it to do simple math. And now, of course, you can do advanced calculus with a spreadsheet. It's amazing. It's like getting a computer and saying, oh, I can do word processing. Well, yeah, you can also do predictive analytics and all this other stuff that it is the difference between the World Wide Web as we first saw it and Web 2.0, where we could do e-commerce and interactive stuff. We're not yet at 2.0
Mm,
because we don't have the
mm,
language for it yet. So that's why I'm bringing this forward, saying, look, humans, we have feelings and we struggle to find the words to express meaning. Large language model has words, but it has no idea what meaning is. It isn't conscious, it isn't logical, it doesn't reason yet. So every time I disparage generative AI, assume I'm also using the word yet, because people are working hard on getting it to do what we want, like a computer should. I want you to write this press release using our brand voice, quoting something that our CEO actually might have said in this format, at this time, in this way, in a little box. Deterministic, like programming. Over here is the stuff that we haven't touched yet. It's what it produces sounds like meaning and it feels like meaning, but it's just like it literally is just guessing the next word, and yet the output is
right.
amazing. These things, they don't know anything. It's not a database. It's not a search engine. It's not a catalog. It just generates the next most likely word. So, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. That's statistically the most like, okay. But then you can get really complicated and ask it really interesting questions. You can pose existential questions, philosophical questions, questions about your love life or your competitors, or you can upload lots of documents and say, well, help me brainstorm about this. Let me think about this out loud. And the power lies not in automating the mundane tasks, but unlocking creative potential.
One of the things that surprised me, and I'm curious what you think about this, is just recently learned, I don't know why it didn't hit me, was there's no memory of a previous conversation.
Well, there can be now with ChatGPT. OpenAI just released another feature where you can ask it to, you just tell it to remember. So I
Oh,
just did one this morning. Um, when I give you the word hashtag people, I want you to remember that what I want in return is an answer to my prompt from this list of people. Imagine you are uh, uh, Albert Einstein and Aristotle and Noam Chomsky and Thomas Edison, and have each one of them voice a response to my particular dilemma. And it will remember that if I say in hashtag people from now on. It's in memory. So this is new.
because I had found that if I stay within one thread, it remembers everything in that thread, even if I come back a month later. But
Yes.
I tend to organize them in folders and I kind of do all of that. So you're suggesting cross thread memorization. And is it go back to stuff I've done or is it going forward?
It is. So we have three different techniques. One is custom instructions, where you tell it exactly. So one of my custom instructions is when I give you a prompt, ask me three questions about it before you execute. Every time. So I say, do this thing for me. Really? Do you mean more like this or more like that? Oh, well, I meant more like this. Well, what about this, this, and this? Well, I don't know. Well, what about this? Yeah, that's not important. Well, what about this? Oh, I hadn't thought about that before. So
I
that's
love
what's
that.
really
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah.
So that's a custom instruction. The next one is memory. Every time I give you this hashtag thing, remember that this is what I mean. And then the third one is creating your own custom GPT, which is kind of a combination of those, except that you can access custom GPTs that everybody else has made. So I have a list of them on my sidebar for this is the one that's going to help me create hypotheses, and this is the one that's going to help me figure out frameworks, and this is the one that's going to help me figure out what movie I might like to watch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So can you give us an example? I'm going to go back to using it in marketing because I think that unless we can find products for the markets for our products and services, and now we don't have an economy, so that doesn't work. So marketing is like a really important part that is innovation in marketing. Like those are the only two
Yep.
things we have to worry about, right? Have you was there? Can you give us an example of a time when there was unexpected effectiveness, and then maybe explain how it surprised you?
Um, every time I push it in a direction that I hadn't thought of before, it shocks me.
Oh,
So I had a mentee who said that they were doing a big pitch to a big client, and there were these three people in the room that they had never met, and they had their deck all set out. Was there any advice I could give? So we went through the LinkedIn profiles of the three people, copied them, pasted them into ChatGPT, and said, "This is the pitch we're presenting. These are the people in the room. What are they most interested in? What will their hot buttons be? What should we be prepared to answer?" And it spat out 2 pages of not just be sure you mention this, but use this language because this is what they have mentioned in their about me. Every time I think of, you know, here is our product pitch. Can you give me 5 analogies? And three of them will be stupid. One will be one I already thought of, and one will be, oh, that's that's great. Let's expand on that.
Right. So going back to this idea of anthropomorphizing the AI,
Mhm.
right, and thinking I didn't know that's what we were doing, but I had just intuitively had done that, thinking this is my research assistant and I will talk to her. And as soon as I can have a face, I'm all in on
Yeah.
talking to rather than typing to.
Which will be the user interface from now on. A website interface will be an avatar saying, "Welcome to the website. How can I
Right.
help you?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it won't feel creepy and weird. It'll, you know,
Be normal.
at first it'll be creepy and weird, of course. But eventually I'm shocked, for instance, with what NVIDIA can do with realism now. And, so we'll get there. I'm patient in that regard. However, the thing that's interesting is the conversational nature. So
Mhm.
when you're coming up with a marketing plan, or you're coming up with ideas for ads or pitches or those kinds of things, how conversational have you got?
Extremely. I too
Oh,
think of it as a partner, Ray. It's not Google. It
correct.
is
Correct.
the more information you can give it, the more context it has, and the better it will respond. And then if you engage and go back and forth and say, "Well, I didn't mean that. I meant this," or "Can you give me 10 more?" Well, what other frame might how else might you frame that? Or what other analogies are there? If you imagine that this is the guru on the hill who doesn't know you personally and may be on mushrooms, you don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
they come up with this amazing stuff that you can then think about and go off and execute on.
Mm. Um, One of the things that's got me thinking is, with so much content now being uh, generated by an AI of one form or another, do you think that we will devalue the output because it wasn't made by a human, was made by a machine?
We will devalue the bad content that is created by the machine. But if the machine creates good content, we like good content. It doesn't matter. But what's really happening is that the human is using it as a tool to create content. And if the human says, "Give me something," and I copy and paste it, everybody go, "That's ugly, that's stupid, that's boring, it's bland." But if I train it to use my voice, if I train it to be more interesting or more persuasive or more storytelling, and I craft my prompts so that the output is fun, interesting, or useful, then Google will see that other people think it's fun, interesting, or useful, and it will say, "Hey, everybody look at this," regardless of how
Mm,
it's created.
mm. I've wondered about that, and I've almost gotten defensive because I like to write,
Mm.
and I like to write LinkedIn articles, and I will write them, and then I'll put it into chat to say, how was my logic flow? How was my transitions? Were there any gaps that you like? I can't get to a really good editor. Would love a New Yorker editor
Right.
or a Forbes editor
Yeah.
to go through and redline my piece. I'm not going to get that, but I can get what feels like that in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And then I don't say, okay, now go fix it. I then go and fix it
I
myself.
did a peer-reviewed article that I put up into ChatGPT and say, "Can you find 5 places that would be useful to have an illustration or a chart, a graph, or something?"
Oh,
Boop, 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 boop. "Oh, thank you." Now, I
how would you
asked, and
make
then,
that illustration?
well, yeah, that I'm an English literature major, so large language model is good. Image generation, I don't have the language. I don't speak photography, and I can't get it to make something simple clear. It wants to put all kinds of stuff into it. So like, not ready yet. I don't know how to prompt it properly for that.
Yeah, it's kind of the same way as you do in the style of the various people you've talked about. It's in the style of the various artists. And even if you go to the art center graduates, and find all the information design graduates and see how much of their work got eaten up by the LLM, right? because that's an interesting thing, is do it in the voice of, or do it in the style of. And I wonder if that doesn't, I mean, there's so many ethics around this. Like, does that mean, like, is that bad to do that? As opposed to if I say to an actor, hey, do it more like De Niro, is that bad? You know,
Yes, it is. And the people who make these models are working against that to say, oh, no, we
mm,
can't do it because you've named somebody. Now, if you
mm.
spell Robert De Niro wrong, it'll do it.
Oh, that's funny. And Jim, thank you so much for helping us understand this crazy world. I mean, it's happening so fast. Tell us, how do you stay on top of the fast pace of what's coming out?
The people I follow on LinkedIn, the podcasts that I track, and having these conversations. It's so I love podcasts and public speaking because I find out how I feel about things. And then I love writing because that's where I find out what I think about it. And then I come out and say, okay, I'm going to do an article about creativity and I'm going to do pages and pages and I'm going to listen for the feedback.
Jim, thank you so much.
Thank you.